Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for coming along. I'm just going to delay a little bit so everyone can pile in. But welcome to the South Australian chapter of the Australasian College of Road Safety lunchtime webinar on the development of the next South Australian Road Safety Strategy. I'm just going to hide my camera because I'm also hosting and clicking all the buttons, and so you don't want to see me looking around all over the place. There we go. Case in point, I have to figure out how to do that first. So while we're waiting for everyone to come in, for those of you that might not have heard of the college, the Australasian College of Road Safety is the peak membership association in Australasia and encourages communication, networking, professionalism and advocacy. The college also publishes the newly rebadged Journal of Road Safety and hosts the annual Australasian Road Safety Conference, which was due to be held in Melbourne this year, but unfortunately due to COVID, has been postponed to next year. So please keep an eye out for that in 2021. Please do consider becoming a member if you're not already a member. There are individual memberships as well as corporate memberships, and I think the prices are fairly competitive compared to other types of bodies. Just for today, I would like to kindly acknowledge the University of Adelaide for supplying the sort of infrastructure for hosting this session on Microsoft Teams. This is our first time using Microsoft Teams to conduct a webinar, so please just bear with me on clicking all the buttons. Please do ask questions during the session. So I think on the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a little Q&A button there. So as you're thinking of your questions, please do put them in. It doesn't disturb the presenter. So anytime, just add them in and send them off and we'll get them answered at the end of the session. The session will be recorded, so it'll be available to, see the slides and pass on to your colleagues if you want to do that. So without too much further ado, I do want to introduce Sarah Clarke, who will be giving the presentation today. I want to make the point that this presentation is on the development of the state strategy. So if you have questions about what's going to be in the strategy, Sarah's probably just going to bat you away, but feel free to ask about anything about the development of the strategy. So Sarah is the Director of Road Safety Policy and Research. She acts the Department for Infrastructure and Transport. She oversees research, provides expert advice, develops strategies and policies, and guides their implementation to enhance safety, reduce road trauma, and improve the productivity of the state's road and marine service networks. She also oversees the testing, trialling and development of frameworks for the adoption of new forms of mobility. Sarah joined the department in early 2020, following over 10 years experience in leadership and specialist legal policy roles for the South Australian Commonwealth and New South Wales governments in the areas of transport, justice and environment management. So let me pass you over to Sarah. If we can get the slides up. Hopefully. Just bear with us for a sec.
Hi, Jamie. Am I sharing?
Yes, I think you are. I'll hand over to you. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks for that introduction. Am I live now? Can everyone hear me? I guess you can't talk to me, can you? So I'm getting used to this format as well. Well, thanks, Jamie, for that introduction. Hopefully you can all see my slides up there on your screen. So as Jamie mentioned today, I'm going to have a bit of a chat about the overall process for developing the road safety strategy. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respect to elders past and present. I'd also like to extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today, and particularly acknowledge that it's NAIDOC week this week. So today's session, I'm going to talk about the overall approach to developing the road safety strategy. So the journey so far in terms of the stakeholder and community engagement we've done and some of the work we've been doing behind the scenes on the evidence-led side of things. And also what we're thinking in terms of next steps on putting it all together ahead of the release of the draft strategy next year. So firstly, why develop a road safety strategy? Well, it's really, as I'm sure you all know, road safety is a complex issue. It does involve multiple agencies and people in terms of who has the ability to influence road safety outcomes. So the idea is to provide an overall framework to help ensure there's a coordination of effort to improve road safety. And I guess as part of that, it's really about guiding future, from a government perspective, it's about guiding future investments in terms of what should be priorities for government investment and action, and to inform government decision making around things that influence road safety outcomes. The other dimension to all this is that there's a national road safety strategy being developed at the moment by the Office of Road Safety. So part of this journey is about ensuring alignment between what's happening at a national level and our state strategy, but also looking at what's most relevant and needs to be the emphasis in a local SA context within that overall national framework. So what will be in the strategy? So I kind of think about the road safety strategy as being a bit like building a house in a way. So I wanted to share with you what our current thinking is about what the final strategy will look like. So when you see us doing things, this is sort of what we're working towards. So first of all, there'll be the overarching goals. So that's where the future vision for what road safety will look like in 2031 would live, as well as our road safety targets. Secondly, sitting beneath that, the idea is that there will be decision-making principles to help inform government decisions around road safety. And thirdly, there'll be priorities. So this is sort of where our emphasis and focus will be in terms of government action and investment. But the road safety strategy, the intent is that it is a high-level strategic document. So the idea is that the nuts and bolts of what we're actually doing will sit in an accompanying action plan. There's been a lot of discussion internally about sort of the duration of the action plan itself and how long that might be. It's still something that we're working through. I guess my current thinking is, 5 years maybe, but with a midterm review. So yeah, working through what could be too long, what could be too short, and what's about right. So sitting over the top of that, the intent is that there'll be a monitoring and evaluation framework. So that's will provide an overall framework to make sure that what we're doing works to improve road safety outcomes. In terms of the overall process for building the strategy that we've just talked through, at a high level, there's 4 phases. So the first phase was completed in August this year with a series of webinars with key stakeholders to get their feedback about what they thought should be the priority goals, principles and priorities to inform the road safety strategy. The second phase is the phase that we're in at the moment. So we've just recently completed a broad-ranging community and stakeholder engagement process via Have Your Say, and we're just about to start some regional engagement sessions at priority locations in the state. The third phase will be the release of the draft strategy for comment. So that's likely to occur in the first half of next year. And just to let you know from the outset, the idea for that is that we put it out for a longer period of time than the recent consultation round to give key stakeholders and organisations like councils, for example, more time to consider the draft and run their feedback through their own governance processes and provide feedback. And the final stage will, of course, be the publication and release of the final strategy. And from there, of course, implementation. So how are we going about developing the strategy? I guess I see it as having 2 limbs. The first is a values-based approach to decisions and actions. So that's developing a strategy with an understanding of community and stakeholder views and perspectives about road safety. And the other dimension to it is it being evidence-led. So being driven by and based on what will make the biggest difference to the largest number of people to improve road safety outcomes. In terms of the values-based approach and what that looks like, that's really what's been sitting behind what most people have seen so far in terms of what we've put out there for consultation. So we've structured our engagement sessions and issues papers and other materials around 4 contexts. And the idea behind that is to encourage people to think about how they interact with the road network and their own experiences of road safety in providing their feedback. We've also presented the issues as part of the issues paper around key road safety statistics to highlight what some of the differences are around road safety drivers, if you like, across those 4 contexts. And it's been interesting to see the feedback start to come in through the webinars and the recent community survey that also highlights those differences and an understanding of those differences. The other thing we've put out there is, of course, our community consultation survey. So we had over 1,300 responses to the survey, which is a fantastic outcome. About 75% of those from the Adelaide Metro and about 25 from regional SA and remote SA, I think was at 2%, so 23% for regional it must be, and about 2% for remote, just to make sure I add up to 100 there. But yeah, so that's a fantastic response, and we're working through those survey responses now, but really interesting to get some insights into what the community sees as being priorities for road safety. And in terms of our evidence-led foundations, so we are sitting alongside that. What's going on behind the scenes is some work on the evidence-led piece, and you'll see that borne out in the draft strategy when it's released next year. So the strategy is being developed based around safe systems principles. We may not structure it like that in the final strategy, but I guess the way I think about it is it's got those foundational pillars sitting behind it. We're also reviewing best practice research and national frameworks that have been developed to address road safety issues. So I sit on what's called the Austroads Road Safety Task Force, which kind of directs the research priorities for Austroads. And I'm also very engaged in the work that the NTC does in this space. We're also working with the Centre for Automotive Safety Research. So I didn't get a chance to catch Jeremy, but I hope I'm not talking out of school and saying that CASA has 2 modelling tools that we're using. The first is around modelling the road safety impacts of different mixes of treatments and different scenarios. So that's about understanding what it would take to achieve a given set of targets, for example. And the other is a tool that is around infrastructure investment and infrastructure decision making in terms of how that gets prioritised. So we're currently exploring that tool and what role it might play in shaping future infrastructure investment priorities here in SA. We're also doing what we're calling deep dives on some key issues, and that might look like one. Regional roads, I think, is the obvious one. People are twice as likely to lose their life or be seriously injured on a regional road. So it really is a focus for us in developing this next road safety strategy. The other 2 might not be intuitively what you might have picked, but just to explain the context behind them. So in relation to fatigue, it is the driver of road safety statistics here in SA, or is a driver, I should say. I think I'm just pulling out my numbers. I think it was 9 people in last year and 12 the year before, off the top of my head, though I could have that the wrong way around, lost their lives, and this was attributed to fatigue. But there's also a suggestion that perhaps in terms of reporting and how accident causes get reported, it is potentially a little bit underreported in our statistics as well. And it's something where there's not much that was sort of identified as a bit of a gap in terms of what's occurring nationally in the road safety space around identifying policy frameworks to address road safety issues as being a bit of a gap. So it was one that was identified as an area of focus for us here in SA in developing our state strategy, bearing in mind that on some of those other top drivers like distraction, for example, there is work occurring on those at a national level at the moment. The other one we've picked out is older road users. The rate of crash involvement for drivers increases in the 80+ age group, and for pedestrians it increases after the age of 70. So it's one of those areas where at a national level, I think on a statistics-based approach, young people has been identified as a bit of a priority. Here in SA, our statistics tell us that older users still needs to be an area of focus for us in developing the strategy. And for regional SA, I'll touch on in a moment how we're going about approaching that. So I might move on to the next slide. Here we go. So in terms of what's happening next in developing the strategy, so at the end of our consultation round that we've just done, we've got a lot of feedback to work through. So we'll be analysing the responses that we had come back in our community survey, as well as the submissions that we've received from key stakeholders, to work through what that tells us people see as being priorities for our next strategy. We're also doing regional engagement at priority locations as part of that focus on regional SA. So what we did is some analysis around, well, what do the road safety statistics, where do the road safety statistics tell us that there's a problem? In the context of COVID, we looked at doing trying to do a statewide roadshow, and at the time that we were doing our planning, we went, well, is there a smarter and more focused way that we can do this? So we went away and did that analysis, and what came out of that is that there were the three areas in the state where we needed to have a bit of a focus. In the first instance were the Yorke Peninsula, Loxton Waikerie and the Coorong. So we'll be doing a session in Yorktown, Loxton and Tintinara through late November and early December. Yeah, we'll be interested to hear from people in those communities, and also talk to them about some of the issues from a road safety perspective that the statistics tell us are a focus for their area. The other thing that's occurring behind the scene, and will really kick off in earnest from the start of next year, is the development of the different strategy elements and focused engagement around those elements. So, for example, working with local government, with SA Police and other key agencies that play a critical role in developing road safety outcomes. So that was everything from me, so short and sweet, but I'll hand over to Jamie in terms of opening the room to questions.
Thanks, Sarah, fantastic. Yes, please do start sending in your questions for Sarah. I haven't got any so far, but I will kick off with some of my own to give you some time to send them in. I'm really interested in how you link the SA strategy in with the national strategy that's being developed, and I guess how you complement the other states that are developing their strategies or already have strategies in place.
Sure thing. Thanks, Jamie. That's a good question. And it was one that I really freaked out a little bit myself at first when I started this job, because these processes are going at the same time. How is this all going to fit together? But in practice, the development of the national strategy has occurred with heavy involvement from the states and territory road agencies, I guess it would be fair to say. So we've, I guess what that means is that in developing our strategy, it's been done with an understanding of, while the national strategy is still under development and yet to be approved by ministers, where the thinking is around what it's likely to contain. So we've drawn on that in terms of, I'll just try and pick an example. It's hard without being allowed to talk yet about what's in the national strategy. But so say the national strategy has identified an area as being a particular priority. We've sense checked that as in terms of, well, is this a priority for SA? Yes. And then, well, what does that mean in an SA context? What are some of the actions that we might need to think about to respond to that priority? So yeah, it will be easier to talk about once there's further decision making and engagement on the national strategy. So stay tuned on that. Yep.
Okay. Fair enough. The other thing I also noticed about the national strategy is it's being developed around something called the social model, and I'm wondering how that works in terms of, well, does the South Australian strategy need to take account of that?
Yeah, so what we're doing at the moment is working through what that might mean and might look like in an essay context.
Right. I am not seeing any questions coming in.
I can see some on mine.
Okay, I'm just suspicious that maybe it's not coming up on my screen, it's coming up on your screen. So
that's okay.
You might have to conduct your own Q&A.
Do you want me to, do you know what I'll do? I'll stop sharing. Shall I stop sharing?
If you like.
Okay, hopefully I haven't done something horrible to everyone's screens then. So the first question I can see is, what about mobile phone distracted driving and enforcement as per New South Wales? Any special focus? So yes, distraction is also a big issue here in SA. So there's been some work done nationally around development of frameworks to address the issue of distraction. So that's one of those areas where we'll be drawing on that national framework to help inform what we do here in SA. And people would have also seen the recent budget announcement around installation of a fixed camera network on distraction. The next question is, what
Sarah, I might just put your video on the screen just so people have something to look at, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. I'm happy.
Sorry, I have no idea why I'm not seeing any of the questions, but please proceed.
That's all good. Thanks, Jamie. Hi again, everyone. So the next question I've got here is, what thought has been given to delivery of the strategy? Engagement with LGA with local government is critical at delivery stage, something that local government has not always bought into. So one of the things that I should have mentioned as part of my presentation, but I'll mention it now, is that we do have some governance arrangements that sit behind the development of the strategy and have involved the local government association as part of those underpinning governance arrangements through a working group. And they in turn have established a working group with local councils around road safety. So we're working to engage with local government in the development of the strategy. And I think it would be fair to say that it's something that's been identified as needing to be an area of focus through implementation as well. So sort of how, so exploring how best we can engage and support local councils around delivering road safety outcomes on their parts of the road network. So yeah, I agree. That is something that we certainly need to work through and identify some actions around for the next strategy. Though that said, I'm not the final decision maker on this, so that's my thinking. But ultimately, it will be up to government to sign off on that. But yeah, to me, I think that's definitely one that we need to be looking at. What else have we got here? How does the strategy respond to extreme behaviour? Is this being considered a purely enforcement issue? And I think that's one where, again, touching on that evidence-led piece. So extreme behaviour is something, as you'd anticipate, that is of concern to the community, and I think that's come out in some of the feedback that they've provided. But in terms of how the strategy responds to it, that's where we're looking at some of those frameworks and policy frameworks that have been developed and are under development to respond to those issues. Yeah, I'm just having a look to see if there's any more questions. We'll just give everyone a couple of minutes. I'm not seeing any more questions. Jamie?
Okay, yeah, nothing coming up on my screen, so hopefully it's not a big hiccup in the system and people are genuinely out of questions. If that is the case, then we can definitely have an early minute. Let me share this one. If anything else comes through, do feel free to stop me. But if not, we will end the session here. do feel free to contact Sarah if you do have any questions later on, and obviously feel free to contact myself. As I said, this session will be recorded and put up on the ACRS website, so you'll be able to view it and share it later on. So thanks again for everyone that came along. Sorry for all the hiccups. A big thank you to Sarah for presenting. I know she's very busy in the midst of putting the strategy together and running your own Q&A session there. Please, everyone, keep your eye out for future sessions. We probably won't do another one until next year, but do enjoy your weekend, enjoy your Christmas, and make sure that you drive safely. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks everyone for coming along today.